Toby Burns, welcome to Extrology. Great to have you here as my guest today.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Really excited, yeah.
You're very welcome. So let's dive in. And I want to start with DJing at 15.
Yeah.
And the question that I thought, when did that stop being a hustle and start becoming identity?
I think it's a character. It's a performance. Every time you went out, because I was a kids entertainer, really. And that was like 14, 15, you know, I loved being on stage. I loved performing. Before that, you know, as a young kid, I used to drum. So, you know, being on a stage, being the drummer and that attention, I actually quite liked it. So, you know, the identity of like, even now people refer to me as like DJ TJ. And I'm like, I was like 16, 17 when, you know, people used to call me that. But to be fair, some people still like refer me as that kids entertainer stage name, you know, 20 years, 15, 20 years later. So I would guess that's, you know, the identity from being the kids entertainer DJ and, you know, now it's like Mr. Silent Disco I get referred to quite a lot. But it was a hustle and it was great money, but I did enjoy doing it in the early years and, you know, making a memory. And I talk about this a lot on different podcasts is, you know, that's the whole ethos of our business now, but it really started at 14, 15 on a 7-year-old's face when you do their kid's birthday. You are making a memory that will last, you know, and even now with our current businesses, we want to make memories that people remember 5, 10, 20 years later and they can refer back to their wedding, to their party, to their corporate Christmas event and go, that was like the best event that we had, because those memories from our brands that we have now, I think are so key, you know, just to celebrate. People don't celebrate anymore. And I talk about this a lot as well, that I feel like in the UK we put people down a bit, you know, like if people are successful, some people like turn their nose up to rich people. If you turn up in a nice car, oh, how did he get that car? Is he a drug dealer or something like that? We don't celebrate success and entrepreneurs and business. In America, they love it. You turn up in a nice car, they're like, you know, well done for you for making it, you know, as part of that American dream. And I feel in this country, like, we like to be pessimistic.
I think, are you familiar with tall poppy syndrome?
Yeah.
It's exactly what we do. To your point, I think we do it very obviously with sports people in particular. So we could pick countless examples of, I don't know, footballers or whoever it might be. So when they first burst onto the scene, we celebrate them. This is going to be the next whoever. Yeah. And then they get to a certain point and we think, starting to get a little bit above their station now. We need to cut them down to size. And then you'll see the papers come out with, they don't do it so much these days because they're much better behaved, but it would be the nightclub stories or the drug stories or the alcohol stories or whatever it might be, just to cut them down to size. And you're right, it's not uniquely British. There are other parts of the world where they love to do exactly the same thing, but it is, you know, I do think we should celebrate success. And I think importantly, to your point, you know, that phrase around people won't always remember what you said, but they will remember how you make them feel. You're making memories. That becomes a really compelling proposition through which to engage people.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, and following on from your point, and I look at the England football team and, you know, how well we did to get into, you know, semi-finals and finals, and then someone misses a penalty and, you know, the papers and social media are at them, and actually, like, look at the success of what, you know, we've achieved, and failure will make you stronger for the next time, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But, you know, the memories, I think that's just been ingrained in me from such a young age of, you know, making that party count. And, you know, as a kids entertainer, as a DJ, they're repetitive.
When did the music first start to kick in? You mentioned the drama. You're a drummer.
Yeah.
How did that come about? What part did music play in your early development?
Loved music. We're quite a musical family. So my mum is a soprano opera singer.
Wow.
So she has one hell of a voice.
Yeah.
So I would, you know, she would always be singing in the house. We had a little piano in the house. So there was always music. My sister was in performing arts. So, you know, back then it was Potters, you know, Potters Holiday Resort. She used to perform there. Then she was Minnie Mouse at Disney for a number of years, which is a pretty cool story to go. Your sister was Minnie Mouse.
Yeah.
And then my brother was a children's entertainer and DJ. So he did it for a number of years. I saw him do it. And I just loved music. I remember getting my first set of decks, CD decks back then at like 13, 14 from Argos. And I remember so clearly they were 200 quid, which is like, back then that was a lot of money. And I still have them in my office at home now. And they work. But, this is just like, I think it was called Home Mix. And I just think there's something like sentimental of going like, that's where you started. And that's where the passion came from to where you are now. And I like seeing that journey because I think it humbles you as well. And I think makes you a better person in business to know like where you've come from to now. And you really sort of appreciate that than people coming maybe from money or a position of advantage, whether they've been given something. And I've got friends now that have started in like events and production, and they've come from wealthy families and that have been given, there's your starting pot, go and make it, which I think is great because some of them have just taken that and done amazing things. But having those decks in my office that I got at such a young age, I think just humbles me and goes, that's where you started as a Christmas present, at 200 quid to where, we've got to now, which is, self-made, no investment, no help, family or friends, just hard graft.
What does being a children's entertainer equip you with from it? Because I think you've got a very discerning audience, right? And, yes, adults, if you're not entertained as an adult, will grumble a little bit. Coming back to that Britishness, we might even complain, but we might not complain that loudly. We might tell other people that wasn't a great, whatever it might be. Kids are brutally honest, right? So I'd imagine that's entertainment at the sharp end because they're going to tell you exactly what they're experiencing. What do you think that equipped you with?
Resilience. And like they are the toughest audience, 100% the toughest audience. But my take on it was not to be the clown, not to be babyish with kids' parties. It was to be cool, so they wanted to be like you. They want to be on the dance floor because you've given a cooler approach to it. And I think what's really key is to, a lot of these children's entertainers, the parents are sitting around the outside of the room, nattering. It can be really distracting. So I use that as I want everyone involved. All right, the kids, they think, all right, we'll get rid of the kids for a couple of hours. They can entertain them. But actually, no, I would entertain the room, not just the 30 kids. I want the adults involved. I want them doing stupid things, because the kids will react to that. It will create that memory. They'll laugh. Parents will laugh. They'll come home and go, he made daddy do this. It's a memory. Same sort of thing. But it certainly gives you resilience because they're a tough crowd. And resilience in terms of like grafting, and I tell this to our team, like it is a really bloody sociable, unsociable job. And I say that because you're around people all the time. There might be 50, 60 people in the room, but you're not socialising. You go in there, sweating your bollocks off, doing the same routine as a comedian would do on a tour. You're doing the same gags, really. And then you're getting in the car, going to the next one and doing it all over again, day after day, week after week. It's the same. You finesse it and you pick up new things, what works and doesn't work, and you transfer those skills into other businesses, which is what I've done. You work out what works and doesn't work. But it gave me the foundations probably at a really young age of graft and resilience. And I use resilience a lot.
Who did you have to prove wrong? And who do you still hear in your head when you win?
So I think the proving wrong, and I don't do it so much now, but I had a really tough time at school. Really tough time. I was bullied quite badly. Without getting too detailed, but, I had my arm broken, that sort of head down the toilet situation. It was a really, really tough time. And that was probably at like 12, 13. So I left school. It was disruptive. I ended up going to a school in London. It was a bit of a journey, but, my parents tried to make the right decision. And actually, during that time, no one really believed what was going on. So when I sort of started the kids' entertainment, and, you miss a lot of things because you're working all the weekends. I missed birthdays. I missed family weddings because people have booked me 6 months, a year in advance. I can't, just cancel because a friend's birthday has come up. So I sacrificed a lot. But at that point, it was proving the bullies wrong. And that was only I'm going to prove that I can be super successful and, have a good life. But I think once I got to a few stages in my career, that sort of surpassed. And now my biggest critic is myself. I'm proving myself wrong all the time. Or if someone goes, that's not really possible, or it's going to take too long, it's going to cost too much money to do, I want to challenge that. I want to make the impossible possible.
And where does that come from? What makes you want to do that?
I just think entrepreneurs are a bit weird. We're just wired up a bit different. It is the toughest gig. We're so hard on ourselves. And it's like, why do we go through this self-inflicting pain, sleepless nights, the stress, the worry? It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You don't get your holiday. Even if you're on holiday, you're still working in your head. I just think we're wired up a bit differently.
Why do you think it is? I think you make a really valid point. Why do you think it is that, I know you're not saying it for sympathy, but people are not necessarily sympathetic to that plight? The thing that strikes me about the entrepreneurs lot, and this is consistent with every guest I've ever had, is that, to your point, the sleepless nights, the 7 days a week, it's 24/7. There is no off.
Yeah.
All that people see, and I think I'm right in saying it's something like 4 out of 5 businesses never make it past their third year. Right. So the chances of failure are, certainly the odds are not in your favour in terms of success. But all that people see are the trappings of that success when it materialises. So to your point, if it is the nice car, the house, the holidays, whatever, the attitude is one of, well, it's all right for you. It's all right for you. They haven't seen any of the 7 days a week, sleepless nights. Can you make payroll? Will you get, can you pay your tax bill? Whatever it might be. They don't see that. Why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. And I think there's this view of, success and has it been given to you, and people really don't understand the graph you've been through. And I don't need to do such late nights now, but even last night I was up in London. I got home about 11 o'clock. I cracked on for an hour and a half, because I wanted to, you always want to make something happen, and you've got to bring the energy. I don't know why people can't see that. And I think staff are very, or I've had staff where, you might go on holiday, or I might go on a work trip. I'm going to China, I'm going to visit factories. They think that's a holiday. They think I'm buggering off. That's the hardest week of my working year, is going to China for a week. And we're off in about 4 weeks to go back out there. And I know the jet lag, 8 hours, I'm going to have 2 hours sleep. You're at it as soon as you get there. That's my hardest week of the year. And then I might come back and actually go on holiday with my family. And they're like, oh, he's going away again. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like working the majority of my holiday anyway. Because in your head, you're thinking about new opportunities. Like, it's a constant gig. It's a 24-hour gig.
Do you think that's because people's perception is, well, that's your choice, though, right? You've chosen that life. Whether you have actually, yes, you might have physically made the choice, but you're just wired that way, right? So I do question as to how much choice in reality do you have. Yeah. But the perception is that's your choice, right? You've chosen to live that way, so therefore I'm not going to be sympathetic to it, and I don't really want to understand your pain, your struggles. I just want to know, am I going to get paid at the end of the month?
Literally, and it's literally that. I think entrepreneurs just can't work for other people. I think there's something in us that, okay, yes, it's our choice. If we've had enough, we could sell up. We'll end up going and doing something else. But I think, and there's an entrepreneur I know who's highly dyslexic, and he always says, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, you create your own environment that you want to work in, not somebody else's. You create the environment you want to work in. And I think that's really key. And it's not the flexibility and the freedom of going away whenever you want or that sort of thing. I think we're wired up a bit differently. And I think chaos gives us stability. Like if stuff isn't going wrong or there's not a challenge to overcome, we're bored. And I think it's a boredom thing. I think chaos gives us stability, and the challenge does as well, that we always want to challenge ourselves. But I do think it comes up, like, we are wired up differently. Not everyone thinks, you know, my brother's a 9 till 5 city boy, loves that, loves going out drinking, entertaining clients. That's the way he's wired up. He couldn't think of anything worse.
Works for him. Yeah.
You know, works for him.
Yeah.
But, you know, the payroll and the sleepless nights and the stress of all of those things is stressful, but we do love it. Otherwise, we really wouldn't do it, because it's just part of you.
When did you realise, was there a moment, if you like, that you realised that the business couldn't just be built on your talent?
Yeah, so there was a key light bulb moment, really. I always wanted to like scale something big, and I think that came from, I read a lot of books, and I don't now really anymore, and I really should. But my brother, when he was DJing, and he was in a very different market to what I ended up in. You know, I was very specific with the market that I wanted to DJ in. But he surrounded himself with some really amazing entrepreneurs. And my accountant at the time, I think, you know, at 15, 16, filing accounts, and decent accounts at 15, 16-year-old, he sort of, I think he just liked me, my accountant. So he became a bit of a mentor. And I always asked him advice. And this accountant, and I would ask him for advice. Not all accountants I would, because they're numbers people. But he was an entrepreneur. And when he retired a number of years later, and I like telling this story, he had about 25 properties that he retired with. You know, and he's an accountant, but he's entrepreneurial because he's going out there and doing that. And I said to him, I was like, how many of them have got mortgages? He was like 20 out of the 25. And I was like, does that not bother you? You retire? And he went, no, I'd have another 10. And that always stuck with me, because people, you know, are like obsessed with clearing their mortgages. At like 50, 60, they don't want to have a mortgage free. And he was like, couldn't care less. It's like, my kids will take it over. If they don't want it, they can sell it and they'll have a nice pot after paying it off, or they can keep them, like, you know. And I think just that acquiring wealth along the way, but I like telling that because I just think that has stuck with me ever since. That my wife goes a bit mad when, like, I've got a bit of a hobby of commercial properties as well. But everyone that I saw, every entrepreneur that I mingled with, and I tried to mingle with super successful entrepreneurs because I want to learn. You know, knowledge is just so much power. So I made sure I did that at such a young age. And there was a common trend with all these entrepreneurs, and they all had property. You know, like some massive amounts of property, but they all had property. And I told myself from a really young age, as soon as you start earning money, save, buy a property, save, do it again. And since then, I've learned more creative ways of buying them, that you don't have to put as much down. And you learn those tricks from other entrepreneurs that have been there, done it, got the metaphorical t-shirt as such. So I try and surround myself and learn as much as I can from others. And there was no like YouTube channels back then or podcasts of knowledge. Now it's unbelievable for a young entrepreneur, like the knowledge. Or I referenced like Stephen Bartlett's new sort of Behind the Diary YouTube. Like, he is taking you into like some pretty intimate meetings of how he's growing businesses. That didn't come. People didn't want to share that, for one. So for young entrepreneurs now, there's so much that you can absorb so you don't make the mistakes that they've made. And I think that's amazing. But we had to go old school. You had to talk, ask the questions. And I was never afraid of like asking a question. And especially like my accountant at the time / like mentor, I didn't pay him for mentorship. It just, we had this relationship. You know, he's nearly 50, 60. I saw him as an entrepreneur because he's got massive amounts. And I think he didn't take me under his wing, but I think he saw something in me that he gave me his time. And, you know, you want someone's time, like in a profession, lawyers, solicitors, mentors, all right, 300 quid an hour, you can have my time. So he gave me actually quite a lot of time, and I'm quite thankful for him. And it was really just asking questions. He didn't give me a business plan or anything like that. A random question, what do you think of this? Like, I've heard this from another entrepreneur. Just an honest opinion, with no incentives or no, I think was really valuable for me. But I say that now, speak to other entrepreneurs and business owners, because people do want to share their success, but also their pains. I think we have a really good community now.
What about, you broke your wrist and everything changed. What did that
I went
moment
off on a
cost
tangent
you?
there. Yeah, there was a light bulb moment. I apologise. And that was, it's key man driven.
Right.
If I'm not out entertaining, I don't earn money. I'm self-employed. And I use that for my staff now. Like, if we're working and we're grafting, everyone gets paid. It's a simple philosophy. And I used to play five-a-side football. I've told this story before. And on a Thursday night, I broke my wrist. The same wrist. It must be weak. And I went to the hospital, and they said, yeah, you've broken a particular bone. We need to put you in a plaster cast. And I said, look, I have got to DJ this weekend. I will come back on Monday, and you can put me in a cast, because I can't DJ in a cast. I can't drive, and maybe that was a bit naughty. So I said, put me in some sort of support splint, and on Monday, I promise you, I'll come back. You can put me in a plaster cast. And I did do that. They agreed to that. So I went out, DJ'd with this broken wrist. It was quite a big function, actually. My dad ended up driving my car for me, because I thought maybe a bit risky. And it was really at that moment that I thought, I need to create something that works without me in it. And I've heard other people refer to that as creating a commercially profitable enterprise that works without you in it, building a business to sell. And I always had an obsession to it at that point of making money. At that, when you're young, you think money's going to make you happy. That myth. And that was really the light bulb moment of I have to do something else than me going out every weekend. I could have staff, but people still want you. They want your ideas for that production of, they want a theme to be a football theme for their son's party. And it's my ideas of making, the lighting structure into a goal, and having the lighting for the production looking like floodlights. So you look like you're in, really immersive creative events. They want your ideas. So I had to find something else. And even now, even though we've got successful brands and businesses, I'm always thinking, I want to create something else. I want to do it again. So I'm obviously always looking for new ideas, new businesses, and trying to innovate. But, I'm like, why do you want to go through that all again? But love it. Enjoy it.
You run 4,000 plus events a year now.
5,500.
5,500
events we run a year, yeah.
Wow.
Or we hire to, yeah.
What did you have to change in you to make that scale possible?
Team. You business owners at the start are control freaks. They want to control everything. And you are to a degree in early days. You're the social media marketer, you're the bookkeeper, you're the customer service, you're you're doing everything. But as time gets on, you have to let go of those responsibilities to other staff. And, I've had it where staff have, stabbed you in the back or, take advantage of that responsibility. There's some scars there, but they're good scars because you learn from it and you don't make them mistakes again. But I think the biggest change is team. That team really do make the difference. And I feel now I'm probably recruiting 4 days a week in my head. Everyone I meet and speak to, I'm like, could they, if they're an expert in their field, could I bring them into my business? What different can that, you're constantly recruiting in your head in some degree. But team, an entrepreneur said to me really early on, you need to hire 2 people before anyone. And that was a bookkeeper in-house and a PA to give you back time. And I half listened to them. I got a bookkeeper because I hate it. I found it so boring, just doing accounts and chasing invoices. I haven't got time to chase invoices. I want to bring in more sales. So I did get a bookkeeper, before anybody else, before I even paid myself when we started Silent Disco, really. And then the PA came only about 3 years ago. So, you know, like 7 years into that journey of like really letting go of just like time destroying tasks. And she's like the best thing that, you know, I don't want to say best thing that ever happened to me, because I should say that about my wife. But in a business sense, she is like the best thing that's happened for me in a professional way, that, you know, she just gives me so much time back. Even this morning, I'm like, oh, can you deal with this? Can you call that person? Like, just deal with it. She deals with all of our tenants now, which is really helpful for me because they're time consuming as well. So I should have listened earlier. So that's my advice, is like, before anyone, bookkeeper, PA, and then you get, you know, the sales. But I think that's the mindset of like, the owners should eat last. You know, hire people that you can't afford before you, because they will make the biggest impact to your business. But in 5 years' time, when you start, you will reap the rewards of that investment.
What belief about yourself did you have to kill to grow?
I think the doubters. I think, you know, my parents have always been supportive. Like, my dad ran a business, but they genuinely thought I was bonkers buying 200 pairs of headphones when we started. You know, what are you going to do? Why have you spent, you know, that money? But I had a bit of a gambling addiction as well once, and I'm like, you got to be prepared to lose what you're putting in. So I was like, this is what it's going to cost me. I know what I'm going to lose. But I think proving the doubters wrong. I think that's what it comes down to. And now the doubter is myself, that I constantly want to prove myself wrong and grow.
Why Silent Disco?
So I always wanted to be in entertainment. You know, we went through the memories and creating memories. And I actually, at the time, was DJing corporate and Jewish and Arab events. So like bar and bat, this was my speciality of DJing and producing these events. So like bar bat mitzvahs, you know, I've had them where they've had Tiny Temper turn up to do a 15-minute performance. You know, they always want to beat the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah that happened the week before. You know, a bit of competition. So they became quite wild. You know, I remember one in Café de Paris in Leicester Square, and it was like Rizzle Kicks. Do you remember Rizzle Kicks?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And they had someone else come and perform, and it was just like, you know, it's mad. It's a 13-year-old's party in reality. But I did very well out of that. And then, you know, the Arab functions where they'll have 500 people come to a 2-year-old's birthday. I mean, I don't even know 500 people at that time. So they were quite wild. And I saw Silent Disco at a festival, and I stood there highly intoxicated, sort of stumbled onto this railing, and I was, you know, not quite with it. But I was watching this Silent Disco, and I thought, this is just unbelievable. And it was in the States at the time, and everything happens in the States before here. And I was like, I want to bring this into the market that I was in, because at these bar bat mitzvahs or even weddings, and this was the whole mentality, is that the kids eat, like you have an hour for dinner, hour and a half, the kids eat in 10 minutes, and then they're causing havoc. You're in a hotel, they're playing Knockdown Ginger on the doors, like they're, you know, crazy. And having kids now, I'm like, yeah, they're feral, some of them. And I thought, if we can do a Silent Disco for the kids on the dance floor while the parents are eating, so they can relax, chill, we can do a Silent Disco with the headphones on the dance floor for the kids, keep them entertained so they're not going mental and not bored or on their phones now, they're just TikTok. We want them to engage. And that's where it really came from. I was like, I know I can sell this into the market I'm doing. And coming from like a sound technology background, I studied music technology at school, and obviously I'm very musical, as we've alluded to. So these headphones that I saw were like cheap Chinese plastic, like just, you drop them on the floor, they're going to break. So we wanted to create something really premium, something that was different. Obviously ours light up, so you know what like music people are listening to, what channel. So we had to really innovate what was already there, and that's exactly what we did. And I loved the concept. I thought it's just disruptive, It's wild. It gives people choice. So, because there's different channels of music, I was like, you know, the amount of times where I've been DJing or doing a kid's party and someone goes, oh, I don't like that song. Can you play something else? Or you go to a bar or a nightclub back in our day and you're like, oh, I hate this song. I'm going to go outside for a cigarette, right? Silent disco gave you choice. That if you didn't like that song, fine, switch to another one. And you will find something out that 3 that you'd prefer to listen to, right? And people love choice in this world now. So I was like, wild concept. I was like, brilliant. I went to China remotely. I worked with some factories. We got loads of prototypes. And, you know, I'm like, I'm young at this point, but I'd already imported from China like glow sticks and whoopee cushions for kids' parties. I knew another entrepreneur, entertainer, multiple properties. He still does it now and he's nearly 55. But he loves children's entertainment, big property portfolio. And he was bringing in like party goods from China, the toys that you'd give out to. So I was like, give me the agent that like imports it in. I was doing it. So like that didn't scare me, importing headphones and dealing with China. But we brought in these headphones and really it takes 3 months, right? You got to have them manufactured. You got to get them on the water. It's a 3-month process really. So I contacted all the bar mitzvahs and the birthdays and the weddings and the Arab weddings that I had lined up, all the corporates over the next year. And at that point, I'm doing like 10 a week, 4 a weekend, really, gigs. And I sold it into them before I'd even got the stuff. I just sold it. I was like, we're going to bring silent disco. It's going to be awesome. It's an extra 200 quid. We'll entertain the kids. Like, you sold it. So I literally had maybe 40, 50 bookings before they'd even got on a boat to come here. And I think all of our businesses since then, we've done the same. Test the market, you know, get bookings for it before you've even got the stuff, because you'll know before you've even bought it whether people like the idea or not. And we use that ethos now with any other brands that we do. Is like, test the market, do your market research, or even just with a prototype before you buy a bloody 2,000 of the things and then you're stuck with them. No one wants them. You don't know. But that is really how Silent Disco was born in that 3 months. And we got all these bookings and I was like, right, well, 200 headphones, we're going to need a few more. So we did 500 and, you know, and now we buy them in the bloody thousands to the UK or Dubai. So it's changed a bit with the other brands that we do, but that was really that 3 month period of when Silent Disco was really born in the UK, and we brought it here, you know, on a really large and premium scale.
Do you remember that first event, the very first Silent Disco you put on, and how that, take us into that moment? How did you feel? What were your thoughts? What was going through your head? What's the emotion?
Just wild. I think the hard work, because I'm DJing it as well, so I'm getting like 2 buzzes from this. I'm DJing this event and now I'm bringing in this product and watching them, like, you know, they've never seen this before, the comments after. But it's funny, even 10 years on, and I've been to thousands of these things. I don't DJ as much anymore, you know, a few times, half a dozen times a year. I will still go to events and check in with the team. And the reactions that happened on the first time over 10 years ago, I get exactly the same reactions as I do now, which is, I've never seen this before, which blows my mind. How have you not seen Silent Disco? But people still, like, they don't know what it is. Like, what are you talking about? We still get that. People don't know what it is. And the smiles on people's faces of, like, when they put the headphones or their friend says, like, change the channel. And then they're like, I get the same buzz as I do now as I did that first event. 100, you know, unquestionable. And I see the same reactions and the same comments after of like, that was amazing. I've never done that before. I'm going to, you know, I've got an idea of when I'm going to hire that next. That's the same comments I got at that first event. It's not changed.
What daily structure or discipline keeps you from burning out?
I think you've got to keep going. You've just got to keep bringing the energy. I think team is really important, and I think structure now is delegation. And I think one of the other key things that, again, I learned from others is I try and spend, and I'm really trying to discipline myself on this, 80% of my time growing the business and 20% operating the business. And some founders would disagree with that. You know, some will spend 100% of their time growing the business. They don't work on any operations or the day-to-day. And, you know, some business owners want to create £100 million beasts of business. Some business owners are content with a lifestyle business. And I'm somewhere in between. And I'm content with that, you know, because I love integrating with the team, hearing their ideas. I don't want to be locked in an office just, you know, only speaking to my senior team. I want to speak to every single person in the team. You know, did you have a nice bank holiday weekend? Like, I think it creates a community, a family. So I'm really disciplined on no more than 20% on operations. Like, is there a problem? Can I help them overcome that? Which means I do have to dive in a little bit into operations, but it's leveraged work. Once that problem's solved, it will work forever. But generally, like, 80% of my time is growing the business, and whatever that may be. You know, you're a marketeer of your business now. You're a recruiter of your business now. We do a lot of content for the business now, and I will bring opportunities to the business by doing that. So I try and be really disciplined, because it's so easy to be sucked back in to, like, operating it, or you have a senior member leave and you think you've got to pick up their work because you've had your sales manager leave, and, you know, your operations is dealing with logistics and stuff. So that is what I try and be super disciplined. It's not always easy. There may be the odd day, but that's where I really try and discipline myself as much as possible, to make sure I'm doing leveraged work.
What part of leadership still feels uncomfortable?
What I really dislike from a high level is firing people. I still find that uncomfortable after 10 years. You know, if something doesn't work or you've got to make that decision, I really don't enjoy it. And some people will, you know, you're fired and you're gone. I struggle with it, because I know that, you know, in a professional sense, they're not a good fit for us, or it's not a good fit for them. But on a personal sense, I know in the back of my head, being a father, they've got a family, they've got a mortgage to pay. And maybe that's the human element of me, but I still struggle with that. Especially, and I'm only dealing with senior team members. And I had an instance, you know, after COVID, which was already a mentally draining time for any business owner, like worst time mental health wise I've ever experienced. And there's a few scars there. But I did have to make some pretty big changes in the business following that, and a senior member who'd been with me a very long time had to go. And that really I struggled with. And even now, if it's a senior team member and it hasn't worked out, or they don't follow the vision that we have, and you got to go, because otherwise you're just delaying the inevitable. I still find that a hurdle. And I'll be like down for a day or the night before that I know I've got that conversation's going to happen. You know, it's a sleepless night. It's not nice firing people. I'm sure some people get a kick out of it, but I really don't like it. I really.
Surprised. You bring a lot of energy, and the thing that strikes me about your business model is it's kind of energy dependent, right? Creating energy in the room. Now, I'd imagine part of your success as an entertainer, going back to, you know, the earlier days, was that energy. You bring it to the room, the creativity, the energy. You create memories for people. But how do you lead now when your business is almost dependent on other people's energy within your team? Yeah. What's your leadership style? How do you lead now?
I say to my senior management, I could work from home every day. I don't need to come into the office. I have quite a lengthy commute to the office. Or I could go on the golf course every day. I hate golf, but I genuinely love coming in. The door's always open to my office. Don't shut myself away. But we bring the energy in. Like, we're a young, fun team. You know, generally all of our guys are young. We have music playing in the office 24/7. You know, if there's not music playing on the speakers all in the ceiling, we want music playing the whole day. Everyone's got bells on their desk. You know, if they win a deal, we want to hear them absolutely ringing that. We want to buzz about the office. And our warehouse team, who are boxing up stuff all the time, we've set up some really decent PA speakers. They should have music on the whole time, and they do, and they choose what, they'll have an 80s day or they'll have a house day. And we said, like, you've got freedom to do that. If you want to stand up and make calls and, like, have a running machine in the office while you make, like, you do you, as long as there's energy in the office. And I think that comes from the leadership team, but we try and make it a fun environment. We're a small business, but in the staff room there's table football and, like, stuff that can just be fun than a boring environment. And it's like, your desk 9 till 5, so you got BBC News in the background. Like, no, we will have music. And some of the stuff, like, even in the office, I think last week I came in after a podcast and it was like drum and bass. And I was like, this would give me an absolute headache. But they wanted drum and bass. And, you can see the energy. So I think that's super important. All of our, like, Christmas events, and, we say this when we take on new staff, we will not be doing a boring meal and drinks. That is not us. We will go to Thorpe Park. We will go, like, go-karting. We've done, I can't remember, last year we did, like, crazy abseiling, trampoline parks. Like, if we're going to do something with the team, it has to be fun. It has to be high energy. We're not about a boring meal with a few drinks for Christmas party. So I think that whole vision, it's culture at the end of the day. It's all based on culture. So I can say to the managers, make it fun. But if I come in and stick on, like, Stevie Wonder for the day, who's, like, the king, or I came in the other day, what did I put on? I think it was, like, Usher's greatest hits, and people, like, you forget about some of these great hits. The energy was great, and I think that's what it's all about. If that comes from me and just, like, at 4:45, I've got some studio speakers in my office, I'll knock them up a bit. It's got to be fun, and we're in music, so why not?
So what does real success look like for you now, and what version of success are you rejecting?
I think, like, crazy wealth is obviously something you want, but I see the business as, like, slow pounds and fast pounds. And, I take back to my younger self, it was all about making money, let's have a nice car, biggest house you can get, crazy holidays, let's have a table, bottles, whatever. And I think the real turning point was becoming a father, and COVID. I think COVID really grounded me to a degree of, like, nothing's safe and guaranteed. You've got to make it safe. You've got to build moats around your business because you can't control these external elements. So it's like, don't bank on the bank here, bank on yourself. You should be the bank. So back then it was, just make loads of money, go to the casino. I was young, probably stupid. But I think COVID was an element of that. And then I became a father just after COVID. So we were like, nothing to do, let's just try for a baby, like, literally. And I think spending time with her, health, because I wouldn't eat breakfast or lunch, you're Red Bulling, you're probably 10 coffees a day. I think that's really the turning point for me of, like, actually, what is success? And I think success is happiness. It's a big element of happiness. Have we got, do we go on some nice holidays a year? Can I give my daughter, soon to be daughters, nice holidays, a good school, a good upbringing, to give them the best chance in life? But money success will allow you opportunities. And I think opportunities for me, my team, and the team really comes into it. The girls, can I give them opportunities? And money will give you opportunities. You could say otherwise, but the reality is money will give you opportunities. So, I talked about the fast pounds, that, we want to invest in other businesses. We want to innovate the product, launch new brands that fit into the model of what we do, which is quite a specific model. And then the slow pounds is really the commercial properties, which I really enjoy doing. I like taking a commercial property, making it into two. So I've got 2 tenants instead of 1. So if one leaves, you've still got cash flow, you know. And I quite enjoy the property side of it. And they're the slow pounds that, you know, at the end of it will give me the moats around me, security for the kids, that when I'm not here, they have something that I've left behind, you know, legacy, you could call it. That is what I see as success and happiness over what I did at the start.
What's a small moment in your business that creates a disproportionate amount of emotional impact?
Like, I touched on COVID, and I hate the C word. Like, that just had... That was such a tough time. Like, unbelievably tough time. You know, from the phones ringing constantly every day. We've talked about this buzzing office, you know, deals are being done, inquiries, you know, we're doing big deals with, you know, big corporate companies, to literally overnight every call being a postponement or a cancellation. And we did really well to postpone a lot, but like, it went from everything to nothing overnight. And we lived by the beach at that time. The office is still at the seaside. And I remember going to the beach, and I just sat there and like sobbed. Thought, what am I going to do? And that was so emotionally draining. You know, like, mental health, like, for that few weeks was tough. What didn't help is, like, my wife was buzzing because she's like, oh, you can paint the fences at home. You know, we can do this. We can paint the house. Like, we've got so much time. They don't understand, you know. I've got huge responsibilities. I've got staff with mortgages. And that was literally the most draining and emotional time for me as a business owner. Everything else, I think... Like, failure, I hate the word failure. I call it mistakes. So, you know, when you said what's emotionally draining, I try and not make anything emotionally draining. Like, failure is good. And I talk about, I mentioned Stephen Bartlett earlier, because I do think he's an exceptional entrepreneur of what he's created. But like, with his new company, the investment fund or the media company, they have a team, and their only job is to fail every day. And they get a trophy at the end of each week. Whatever staff member has failed the most gets the trophy. Because the failure or mistake, I prefer to call them mistakes, will give you the experience of what works and doesn't work. So then you don't make them mistakes again. That gives you knowledge. And again, the knowledge is power. So like, when I make mistakes, which we all do, I don't fear that anymore. Like, you're so scared, like, oh, if I make that mistake, it could cost the company 10 grand or 100 grand or £1 million if you want to scale it up. So like, I don't fear making a mistake or failure, because if I make that, failure is experience, experience is knowledge, knowledge is power. So nothing really. I'm more resilient now, off the back probably of COVID and having to go through that emotional pain, that I don't fear mistakes. And I tell the team, like, if you make a mistake, fine. That was the best money on training I'll ever spend, because I know we'll never make that mistake again. You know,
you make a really good point. I always remember somebody once said to me that it's only a failure if you repeat it. Other than that, it's feedback. And it's a great opportunity to learn. If you continue not to learn those lessons,
there's a problem.
Yeah. But actually, in the moment, if you're able to learn from that experience, it becomes invaluable.
Yep,
absolutely. How do you want your leadership to be described when you're not in the room?
I really want to ask the other person that's sitting in the room now. One of our team came with us today, our senior team. I think like dedicated, you know, because I try and be present and really dedicated, and a grafter. I think grafter because I try and like instill that into the business. Like we are, you know, a team of grafters all working 100% rather than half the team working 100%, half working 50%, not pulling their weight. Like we all are a really great team of 100%ers. So I'd like to say grafters because they see I put the effort in. Whatever it is, I'm never satisfied. I'm always investing in either new stock, new products, innovating, or people, you know, because they are the best investment is team and people. And I think the more they see that, I would like to say positive, grafter, and resilient. Nothing phases me. If you tell me it's impossible, I will prove you wrong.
So if you could have the 15-year-old DJ version of you sat across from you now, what would he be proud of?
I think that the journey, and people talk about the journey because it's a long, tough journey. And I think they'd be super proud, you know, and I'm probably very harsh on myself that I even tell my wife I'm not where I want to be at this birthday. I know where I want to be and I'm not there, but I am there, but I'm always pushing myself. So I think they would be proud, but I'm probably too harsh on myself that, you know, I'd probably say, oh, you're still not where I thought you'd be at 15. No, they would be proud because we have created an amazing brand, an amazing business, an amazing team, and a beautiful family as well, which I didn't think, you know, I'd have maybe so quickly.
What's one belief that's carried you through it all? You mentioned COVID. We've touched on the demands that that placed upon you. But what's one belief that's carried you through it all, even when everything else shifted?
If you don't innovate, you'll evaporate. And I think that's just a key term that I use all the time, that you have to keep innovating. You know, from day one to now, innovate, because if you're not innovating, the marketplace is, and you will be left behind. So although you want to sit back and just take the money in and not spend out any more money in investing, we're constantly innovating. And I think it's the 1% details that really make the difference. You know, let's increase our conversion rate by just 1% this month. And again, the next month at the end of the year, you've increased that conversion rate by 12%. So it's the 1% details that I really care about. And taking that with me the whole way through, you know, that will never go.
So what does the future look like for, I want to say for Toby Burns, but I also want to say for Silent Disco. So let's start with Silent Disco first. What does the future look like for you guys now?
We were looking to move into a new premise this year. So that's the focus. We want to buy, you know, all the commercial properties we buy, we try and trade out of them because it's a more creative way. So, you know, we're looking to go basically expand by 3 times in premises, expand the team. We opened in Dubai. It'll be 2 years in October. So I'd like to see that more successful, and we're working on that because it's a new market. They have a different way of doing stuff. It's a great challenge. Love it. So we'd like to see that expand, and we'd also like to acquire other businesses in the space. You know, we already are the market leader. We're the best rated, you know, biggest following. We've got that, but we've got to continue to stay at the top, but also acquire other businesses. You know, that's a real key thing for me. Is okay, you can buy properties or whatever, but the best way of growth, in my opinion, now is to acquire other companies that fold into our existing empire. You know, that would be key for me in a business sense. And personally, you know, trying to create or trying to improve and make my personal brand more aware. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs, personal brand will really bring in opportunities to the business. And it's that push and pull. You know, as an entrepreneur starting out, you're always trying to push for opportunities, you know, trying to sell someone something all the time. And now these opportunities are pulling towards me, where an email will land in my inbox and go, we've heard about you, we want to do this. And that's really what I want to continue this year, is build the personal brand. It will bring opportunities to my team, to me. We've got the YouTube channel, you know, all the behind the scenes stuff. That is really the focus. And when I said 80% working on the business, content is a huge part of that now. Famous to a few, you know, I don't expect to be UK famous, but famous to our industry and the niche. And then you broaden out and, you know, people knowing that we are the experts. And also, if you want to sell your business, they go, I don't actually know, because I've heard him talk about that he may be interested. You know, you pull opportunities. So that's key for the next year. I'll also be a father for the second time. So I'm like, you know, got to go through that again, the sleepless nights. But I love these challenges, and I just take it all as a whole. Let's go again, 365 days next year and do it.
So where should we be pointing listeners who want to find out more? Where can they find out more about Silent Disco? Where can they find out more about you?
So Silent Disco and our subsequent brands, just check the social handle at the Silent Disco Company. We're on all the platforms, Linky Dink, I call it. TikTok, you'll see all of our stuff. And then Toby Burns, the Eventrepreneur. It's a little play on words. And we've got sort of our YouTube channel where we show behind the scenes of just every day. It's not Stephen Bartlett production, I promise you, but to me, it's a bit more real as a small business. You know, we go to some commercial properties, check in with our tenants, showing the challenges that we have just in the office every day of, you know, customers and couriers, and just to show the everyday stuff. So you can catch that on YouTube, LinkedIn, or tobyburns.net.
Fantastic. Toby, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. I've really enjoyed it. Some great insight. It's a wonderful story, and you bring an awful lot of energy to the conversation. And I think the most important takeaway from my perspective is that the memories you're making. I remember quite vividly as we're talking not when I first participated, but when I first saw a Silent Disco in action, and I watched my now 6'9", 30-year-old nephew, as probably, I don't know, he'd been 17, 18, something like that. I walked into a tent at a festival, and he's in the middle of the floor with the headphones on, dancing like nobody's watching, having the best time. And it struck me then. I remember walking in the tent and thinking, this is crazy, but it's brilliant, right? And it brings a smile to my face when I think of the memory. Yeah. So the fact that you're creating those memories for tens of thousands of people, more, hundreds of thousands of people every year, is phenomenal. And I think it's great that we have people like you in business creating these great events, creating these great memories. So I really appreciate you taking the time out today, and I wish you continued success.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Cheers.